Hey y'all, Devin here. Before we get into the podcast, this episode was recorded a few weeks ago at this point, and I just wanted to put a short note in here. We were dark last week in support of making space for Black voices in all media spaces, and me and Adam and the podcast as a whole are ardent supporters of all the protests going on right now and of Black Lives Matter. So linked in the description of this episode are a bunch of different resources you can check out to donate, research, educate yourself, and help out. Thanks.
This is a show about getting spooked for fun, and neither one of the hosts are associated with the attractions discussed in any way, except for those skeletons in Devin's closet. Some topics may go from ghoulish to ghastly, so viewer discretion is advised. Welcome to the Great American Scream.
Ouija.
It's not like Bloody Mary, where if you say it 3 times, it just materializes in your lap.
I was hoping that it would be a little bit like Bloody Mary, that if I said it 3 times, a funny bit would come into my head, but apparently not. Hello, and welcome to the Great American Scream. My name's Devin Wright.
My name's Adam O'Connell, and I already have a concern. Well, I have many concerns all the time about many things, but I have a concern about this episode specifically, is that the term Ouija, like capital O Ouija, is trademarked by Hasbro. So, like, are we in trouble?
I don't think we're in trouble, but that doesn't mean we can't use our very funny trademark joke that we do all the time. So we just have to stay away from that.
Ouija, a property of Hasbro Inc. Productions.
Yeah,
and
maybe every time we say the word Ouija, we have to say Ouija as reserved, all rights reserved by Hasbro Entertainment. Every single time.
But interestingly enough about Ouija, that when you say Ouija, now you're usually referring to this specific toy that is made by Hasbro. And the generic kind of catch-all term for these kind of boards is a talking board or a spirit board, which this is like the same way that everybody refers to an adhesive bandage as a Band-Aid. We just recognize it as the brand name. But if another company made a Ouija board that wasn't Hasbro, they couldn't call it a Ouija board. They'd have to call it something else.
Eventually, it'll be like aspirin, where Bayer used to have the trademark of aspirin or something like that. And then it became the generic term, and then they lose the trademark. So actually, if we say Ouija enough, then Hasbro
has no choice.
And we can all sell Ouija boards.
Yeah. So we're going to talk.
Selling Ouija boards.
Is this the plug for our branded Ouija boards?
Yeah. It's they're branded spirit boards, first of all. And it's wild. I don't think most people know that Ouija is owned by Hasbro, that they sell.
Yeah, I feel like it's something that's like maybe in the back of everyone's mind, but you don't actively think of it as you don't think of being able to buy a Ouija board at Target when you 100% can.
Yeah, and you also don't think that about when you think of the hit horror film of the same name, Ouija, you don't think about the fact that Hasbro helped produce that film.
Yeah, in the same way that they helped produce Battleship. It's literally the same concept. I hope Battleship is a Hasbro.
For Ouija, there's at least a conception that, like, if you play a Ouija board, you're communing with a spirit. With Battleship, I don't think anybody went into Battleship thinking, is this going to add some sort of metaphysical layer into the next time I play, a la Jumanji?
Both were bad films, so
how dare you?
Let's talk about the history of Ouija and kind of get into the discussion on whether or not it is a gateway to the paranormal or just an interesting scientific phenomena. Devin, have you ever used a Ouija board?
I don't think so. I remember I had a friend in elementary school who was very into weird stuff. And one time...
that friend was me.
It was not Adam. she one time brought a paper Ouija board onto the bus and a shot glass. We were like 7.
Okay.
And she wanted people to do the Ouija board with her, and people did. But then she like convinced, like there was this whole big rigmarole about not using the Ouija board by yourself and all this stuff. And I was just scared and I wasn't about it. So I don't think I did one, but I possibly communed with a spirit at some point.
Okay. Yeah. I was gifted a Ouija board by my Nana when I was a young lad. And so I've used it very many times, usually with my siblings, but also sometimes at like, teenage slumber parties. And I have it in my closet right now. I haven't used it in quite some time, but I have used it quite a bit.
I was a cool kid in high school. So instead of talking with ghosts, we kissed each other. That's what we did. Which, looking back, I wish I had spent less time kissing people and more time talking to ghosts.
Yeah. So if you don't know about Ouija boards, I imagine you're already done with this episode because we've gone quite a while without saying what they are. But a Ouija board or a spirit/talking board is usually a flat wooden board, but nowadays they could be made with cardboard or other things. With letters, numbers, yes, no, and goodbye printed on it. It's meant to be played by at least 2 people, where all of the parties place their hand on the planchette, which is this like plastic arrowy thingy with a piece of glass so you can see through it. And you will ask questions to this spirit that you are communicating with, and the spirit will move the planchette to spell out the answers.
Right. And the planchette is a like teardrop shape with a glass in the middle, not a shot glass.
No,
despite what Zoe told you on the bus.
No, it's like a little monocle. And it is a cool shape. I have earrings that are planchettes. So if you get nothing else out of Ouija boards, it's that a planchette is a cool shape.
Yes.
So the idea of talking boards and what's known as automatic writing, which is this idea of kind of what a Ouija board is, with like spelling out these answers with these subconscious movements by connecting with the paranormal, or literally just doing it by writing with the pen and paper. It didn't start with Ouija. Some mentions of it date all the way back to Song Dynasty China, which was around 1100 AD. And even back then, automatic writing was associated with necromancy and communicating with the spirit world.
Which that makes a lot of sense why we had to do automatic writing in acting school. Because we had to commune with.
Did you ever do automatic writing? I never did automatic writing in act. Wait, what class did you do automatic writing in?
Like when we had to do like in off the podcast in like Rosemary's class, wasn't that? We did automatic writing. It's not the same kind of automatic writing. We're making a joke here about
free writing.
Yeah.
No, because
automatic writing is when you sit down and you just write.
I could totally see the concept of paranormal automatic writing actually being used in an acting class.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
But
sadly, automatic writing in acting class never involved spiritual possession, but it should have.
But it should have. So as part of the spiritualist movement in post-Civil War America, psychic mediums began to use talking boards to communicate with clients' relatives who had been lost in the war. It became a very kind of fashionable new way to conduct seances or communicate with spirits. And spiritualism really worked for America during this time, because it's odd to think that in such a conservative period in American history, that such a Christian period, that people will be okay with the idea of communicating with ghosts. But the average lifespan of an American at this time was under 50, and spiritualism kind of worked with Christian rhetoric because it didn't have anything to do with communicating with the devil or demons. It was literally about just talking to people who had passed away, which is perfectly fine in Christianity. Everybody had seances. Everyone did readings. Even Mary Todd Lincoln, who held a seance in the White House after her son passed away.
Yeah, this is actually part of the reason. I don't remember if you or I specifically was like, we should do a Ouija episode, but one of the reasons I was excited to do one is the link to like 19th century America is so fascinating, because one of the main reasons why people were into talking to ghosts was that the Civil War is still the deadliest American war in history. So most people had a dead relative close to them, which meant everybody was pretty closely and easily associated with death as a concept. So it wasn't as scary or macabre as it would become in the 20th century, because with the Civil War, you had deaths happening all around and they were tragic, but they were common. Whereas with World War I and World War II, death became almost creepier and more dangerous because of the way wars were fought.
Yeah. And part of Ouija's appeal for people that worked with like the paranormal or people who are psychic mediums was actually its efficiency, because previously in seances, the way to kind of do this automatic writing or communicating with spirits was mediums would just say letters of the alphabet and the spirit would knock at the correct letter and they would have to write it out. And that took quite a while.
That's a long time.
Clients wanted a much snappier way to communicate with their dead relatives, so Ouija became convenient in that way.
It's the ghost version of touch-tone telephones instead of the dial.
Yeah. The actual commercial Ouija board, sort of like the parlor game, was created by Elijah Bond and patented in 1891. The name Ouija is actually a compound word combining both the French and the German words for yes, oui, and ja. Even though the first production company claimed it was a, quote, ancient Egyptian word meaning good luck that they had.
Of course.
That the board had told them. Like, they had gotten that word from the board.
They asked the board what the name was, what its name was. And as we'll talk about later, the kind of like scientific like phenomena behind spirit boards working has to do with like subconscious muscle movements, and the idea of two guys like trying to sell a wooden board, sitting down and putting the planchette down and spelling out a word that meant nothing and then coming up with a reasoning for it is so good.
There's a couple of different stories too about where it came from. There was one where somebody said it was a misreading of a woman's name, Ouida, Ouida, that like a man's that classic woman's name,
Ouida.
That he had seen like a photo of her while he was inventing the board.
Dying in horrible passion, and then they came with him and was like...
But so these boards became immensely popular, especially during the turn of the century. But really from the 1920s on, it was advertised as a, quote, never failing amusement and recreation for all the classes, and a link between the known and the unknown, the material and the immaterial.
Yeah, Ouija boards became like a mainstay of American pop culture in a way that must be so weird for people today to look at. Because there's like a Norman Rockwell painting of like two people on a first date and they're like doing a Ouija board. Like it was a fun thing.
It wasn't scary.
It wasn't scary at all, which is specifically weird because you would think that like Hasbro, which is a toy company that now owns it, would like try to bring that back in some way. At least, I don't know. You would think.
Yeah, I feel like Ouija was purchased by Parker Brothers in 1967, which was
the Monopoly guys,
the Monopoly men, and was then acquired by Hasbro in 1991. But so the original intention with Parker Brothers kind of original marketing was in the similar vein as these kind of like fortune telling or like mystery date games where you could ask questions about like if like Johnny from next door had a crush on you and the Ouija board would tell you.
Right. Or you were on a first date and it was like, does he want to kiss me? And it was like, no. And you're like, all right, okay, goodbye.
It's done. And because of that, they were really, really popular, especially amongst teenagers and especially amongst teenage girls. It was a big like slumber party thing. But
there's a link to witchcraft there.
Yeah.
Women
absolutely.
not having social power and then turning to like things like spirit boards.
But so there's a point after Parker Brothers bought it that the rhetoric around Ouija changed from spiritual to spooky and became dangerous because of The Exorcist. The Exorcist came out in 1973, which and is still considered today to be one of the scariest movies of all time. And it was marketed as based on a true story. And in the film, Reagan becomes possessed by a demon after playing with an Ouija board.
Ooh.
So it's kind of like the Jaws effect where nobody was really afraid of sharks that much until Jaws came out. So nobody was scared of Ouija boards until The Exorcist came out. Yeah. And almost overnight, people associated Ouija boards with the occult. It started appearing in horror movie after horror movie. Religious groups were denouncing them and burning them. And like this one kind of cultural movement is still today how we see Ouija.
Yeah, and it's like sharks, or like last week's episode, clowns, which means that next week, to round out the trilogy, we'll be doing an episode on sharks.
Shark horror.
Sure.
But so let's talk a little bit about some of the common taboos and beliefs surrounding Ouija. So these are a couple
I have my Ouija board here.
Yeah,
it's a genuine Hasbro Ouija, and it's here in front of me, a GHO.
I took a couple of different rule books from different versions of the Ouija boards in different years, and a couple of other kind of like occultist websites and paranormal websites that summarize do's and don'ts when using a Ouija board, and I've selected a couple of important things to remember. So the first thing is to never taunt a spirit while using the Ouija board.
That's just never taunt a spirit, period.
Yeah, no, I just
don't
wouldn't.
Taunt no spirit. Just let him be.
That's why in like those ritual games, you can't do stuff like pop a melatonin when you're trying to play Man in the Fields, because that's cheating and you shouldn't taunt him.
Yeah, but that's different because I'm trying to be like flirty and fun during that game. So I'm not taunting him. I'm like teasing him, you know?
Okay, number 2, never ask the Ouija board when you're going to die.
They don't know, and they feel awkward when you ask, because it's weird as a ghost to have so much preternatural knowledge and not know when somebody's going to die. It's just really awkward. I guess to put them in a weird position.
The other implication is that you ask the Ouija board when you're going to die, and it spells out like now.
Yeah.
That would be bad.
It spells out now, and then you're like, wait, what? And it goes, no, I was just goofing.
Rule number 3. Spirits do not ever have to tell the truth and could be lying to you about their identity to gain your trust.
Ah.
So
what
you
is
think
the goal of a ghost who gains my trust through
Devin, maybe you think you're talking to the late great Prince, when in reality you're talking to a Prince says, "May I come into your home because I want to jam on your guitar?" And you say, "Of course, Prince. I would love for you to do that."
I say, "Of course." Of course, the ghost formerly known as the human, formerly known as Prince.
The ghost formerly known as the artist, formerly known as Prince. But then you invite him in, and it's not actually Prince, it's a demon, and now he's possessed your toilet brush.
Yeah, and I should have known firsthand, because Prince can't touch my guitar. He doesn't. He phases right through it.
Rule number 4, never use a Ouija board alone. The more people you do it with, the better.
Zoe was right.
Yeah, and there is a scientific reason why you're not going to use it alone too.
With one person, yeah.
Which we'll get to that later.
We'll talk to that, yeah.
Rule number 5. Now, this one I found interesting, because if this is true, I'm in trouble. Do not ever use it in your home.
Adam, you have to burn your whole house down.
I've used it out so many times in my house. I've used it in other people's houses.
Where else would you do it?
I've used it in my Nana's house. Like, where else are you going to do it? Where are you going to take it?
Into the woods?
That seems like a worse idea.
Yeah.
Rule number 6. Elect a leader who will ask the questions and read answers aloud. Everyone else must close their eyes and should not laugh or ask if it's working.
That also tracks with like how the game works. Yeah.
Rule number 7. It is bad luck to leave the planchette on the board after you finish.
That makes sense. That's a Ouija the movie thing. It'll just start moving and talking to you all the time.
Right, yeah. You shouldn't, don't leave it there.
It'll start annoying you. Like when you leave, it's bad. It's phantom power. You're wasting energy. The Con Ed bill will be through the roof. Like
the paranormal Con Ed, the paranormal spirit energy Con Ed bill. Rule number 8: always end your
bill.
That was there you go. There you go.
Ah, there it is.
Rule number 8: always end your session by saying goodbye, and never ever remove all of the hands from the planchette if the spirit has not said goodbye yet.
That's just good manners. It's like it's like those mall contests where the last person to have their hand on the Subaru minivan.
Hands on a hard body.
It's like that. The last person to have their hand on the planchette gets the demon inside them.
Okay, yeah.
And $10,000.
It's presumably to close the portal properly, because it's kind of like chasing a wasp out of your house and then being like, I'm glad that wasp is gone, but then you leave the screen door open still. It can get right back in.
Ah, dang it. You left the dang screen door open. That demon's going to come right back in.
Yeah. Number 9. These are some warning signs for what things to look out for. That means you should peace out. If the spirit starts counting down numbers or going through the letters of the alphabet, if it starts making an infinity symbol, or if the spirit introduces himself as Zozo.
Zozo, the Ouija board demon.
Yeah, Zozo is
one of the bad guys of the podcast.
A very prominent Ouija board demon, and often when people are using Ouija boards, if they contact a malevolent spirit, it is often Zozo. Which is a cute little name for a malevolent spirit.
It is a cute name. It's probably because on most Ouija boards, the Z and the O are pretty close together, because it goes like A to P, right?
Yeah.
But also, if you're playing Ouija with like a 7 or 6-year-old and they know how to do the alphabet song real good, maybe they just want to go through the alphabet anyway, and there's no demon in there.
But yeah, watch out for Zozo. And I guess others, but Zozo especially.
Zozo's the main one.
Yeah, number 10 is a compound rule. Don't use it in a cemetery and never burn it.
Which, if you burn it in a cemetery,
very
God
bad.
Help ya.
I guess, now what's worse, using it in a cemetery or using it in your house?
Which is worse, using it in a cemetery, using it in your house, contacting Zozo, or burning it? Can you erect a house in a cemetery, light it on fire, and then contact Zozo?
Talk to Zozo. So, kind of back to the culture surrounding it, most denominations of Christianity label Ouija as a general no-no. I couldn't explain why. But because it's divination or opens up the door to communicate with demons.
And
Obviously,
plus the devil's best friend is Zozo. It says that in the Bible.
Obviously, this is only going to make young Christians want to use it more, especially Catholics, because the Catholic to goth pipeline is robust and well-oiled. So, because Catholicism, growing up Catholic, like Catholicism has so much to do with blood and demons anyway. Like,
and it's
almost every Catholic I know has used a Ouija board at some point.
Yeah. As somebody who spent much of their life as a Catholic, really loving it, just really loving the space, living there. It's the most pagan of all the Christian denominations.
I would say, yeah. It's definitely up there.
It makes sense.
I wonder what the paganist stance on Ouija boards is.
Ooh.
I didn't look that up, but I will. A couple of famed or notable uses of the Ouija board for paranormal activity. In the late 1940s, a 14-year-old boy under the pseudonym Roland Doe was exorcised in Maryland after allegedly being possessed by a demon because he used a Ouija board.
I like Roland Doe as a sort of Jane Doe, John Smith type pseudonym. We should bring that back.
Yeah, I always thought that, like, if you're going to have these anonymous people, if you all give them different names, they're not quite anonymous anymore now, aren't they?
Wow, cracked it wide open. Witness protection program, where are you at?
It never made any sense to me. But anyway, the great English occultist Aleister Crowley was a huge fan of Ouija boards, and it greatly influenced a lot of his studies and religious teachings. And perhaps my favorite example, the great Alice Cooper once claimed that he got his stage name as his real... I'm sorry to disappoint you that his real name is not Alice Cooper. His real name is Vincent Fernier or Fernier.
And that's a good name.
But he got his stage name Alice Cooper after a Ouija board told him he was a reincarnation of a 17th century witch with the same name. Now,
hell yeah, Vincent.
Years later, he did confirm that he was just joshin', and he just picked Alice Cooper because it sounded cool. But frankly, I'm going to reject that part of that fact and choose to believe that he is a reincarnation of a 17th century witch named Alice Cooper, because I like that a lot for him and for me.
For me, it adds to the greatness of it that this man then created this mythology for himself that is very powerful. And then later is like, it's just a goof, y'all. Like, that's also very good.
It's very Alice Cooper. I mean, like, he guest starred on The Muppets. Everyone thinks of Alice Cooper as this kind of very scary, hard man. He was on The Muppet Show, baby, and he was great.
He was on The Muppet Show, baby.
All right, so let's talk about the counter argument to the paranormal side of Ouija. Right. So talking about the science behind why Ouija, air quote, works. So for those who do not believe in the paranormal, I hear you, but you say, wait a minute, I have used a Ouija board and I was definitely not the one moving it, which I can attest to. I've used Ouija boards and I can right hand swearing on the Bible and or the devil Bible that when I used a Ouija board, I wasn't thinking about actively moving it to make answers. It was just kind of happening. So what's up?
So what's up? This podcast's all about how horror's fun, and now we're gonna break it open.
Well, I think this is still fun.
Yeah, for some people, including myself, the explanations behind paranormal ideas, it's just as much fun.
Yeah. So the phenomena is known as the ideomotor effect, which is a very fancy way to say unconscious or subconscious movement. And the power of your own body. So, really, the demon was inside you the whole time.
We were Zozo.
Yeah, the whole time you were Zozo.
Maybe the real Zozo was the small muscular twitches that we had along the way.
So it really can be this phenomena can be attributed to a lot of different psychic phenomena. So dowsing rods, which are those two metal rods that psychics will ask spirits to cross and uncross for answers to questions. Pendulum dowsing, where they follow the patterns of the pendulum or ask the spirit to move them. Psychic drawing. Table turning, which is when you kind of similar to a Ouija board or the knocking method, where you rotate the table to give answers. And even Charlie is a ideomotor effect thing.
And if you ever did the thing where you told your friend to put their fingers out, their pointer fingers straight out, and then you pretended to put string around it, you're tying it together and your fingers went together, that's also
I was trying to remember which one
effect.
That was. I kept thinking about the one where you push two pencils erasers together, but that's something else. That's not
just
this.
Physics.
That's just physics.
Two erasers together. It's like when you hold a pencil up and it looks like it's made of rubber. It's like that.
So in the case of Ouija specifically, your brain can unconsciously or subconsciously create memories, images, or imagined/desired answers. And your body responds to those signals from your brain by moving your muscles to those answers without you even realizing. It's kind of like a physical daydreaming. When you start daydreaming, you don't have to go oh, now let me paint the sky that is behind the ship where Tom Hanks and I are flying. It just happens for you. And this is the same way, but instead of in the brain, it goes from brain to body.
Right. It's a very viewable version of the phrase muscle memory. Because your brain has a certain associations with makes assumptions all the time, constantly, forever. If the planchette moves over one letter in response to a question, your brain is already thinking, what word starts with B that would fill that without you even knowing it. And then your brain starts to move your body without you knowing.
Yeah. And a very quick way to prove this, if you have a Ouija board at home, you can try this.
Pull it out.
Pull it out right now. You can try this. Try doing it blindfolded. Yeah. Nothing will happen. And there have been several studies showing that participants either don't move at all when doing Ouija blindfolded or create totally incoherent answers because they cannot see the board. So the effect, in my opinion, becomes equally as cool as, if not more cool, as if you were communicating with a ghost, because you are communicating with your subconscious in a way that you wouldn't be able to by just talking. And when you do it with multiple people, everyone's subconscious brains are working together to generate answers. Nobody, you notice when you play, there's no push and pull of fighting of where to move the next letter.
Right.
One person acts on their subconscious impulse first, and everyone else just follows, like a good improv game.
Right, like a great improv game. It's exactly like, it's like free word association except fun.
Yeah. So experts believe that the ideomotor effect can be used as a very powerful tool to access the subconscious. In a 2012 study, scientists observed that participants were more easily able to access accurate factual information about their lives while using the Ouija board instead of just trying to remember. So stuff if just asked, they wouldn't quite be able to answer totally accurately. They could provide way more accurate answers while using the Ouija board.
That's so cool.
Isn't that wild? And then the same study would ask participants yes or no questions. And even when they didn't know the answers, they were able to answer more correctly while using the Ouija board than not.
Ah, that was actually because a ghost went in them.
That one was a ghost.
Knew the answers. Yeah, that one was a ghost. All the rest of them not ghosts. That one, though, that one was a ghost.
That was the ghost of still living Alex Trebek, the only man in the world who knows everything, and was providing the answers to these questions.
Alex Trebek's original name was Ouija, and he asked the Ouija board what his name should be, and it said Alex Trebek.
But so the Ouija board can be used to access something that we can't normally communicate with, but it is not ghosts, or is it? It's our subconscious.
Which is so goddamn neat.
Yeah, so this obviously kind of opens the door for a discussion about the dangers of this effect and how it can be used to scam people, especially in the case of psychic mediums, because of the what we know as like the business of psychic mediums nowadays is a lot based on scamming. But that is a discussion for another day, because that is its own thing. That door has been
opened, and we're going to leave it open for an indeterminate amount of time until we figure out a tasteful way to talk. Yeah. I think eventually it would be very fun to talk about different aspects of psychic mediums and the kind of work they do. I think there's interesting discussion to be had about things like tarot cards and things like that, which are like interesting fusions of the like scientific statistical thing and also the non-scammy side of psychics, which is just like saying interesting stuff based on random chance.
Yeah, like, I'm more invested in kind of what we were talking about before, the American spiritualism movement kind of psychics. That's really cool.
Fascinating.
Especially because with modern psychic abilities are most often associated with like the ability to solve crimes or help people grieve. While back in the day, it was kind of more so used just to like check in with Uncle Terry. How's your leg wound? Like,
yeah, it was in the same vein as sleight of hand magic, not as like, oh, it's just a fun trick, but it's like a talent.
Yeah, the stakes weren't nearly as high.
Right.
It was much more leisure.
I don't want to talk about the celebrity whatever medium. I want to talk about the women at the Renaissance Fair who would tell me to pull a card and read my palms every day and tell me that I was doing great, sweetie. Like, I want to talk about her.
Yeah, that's great. So because of that, I think that Ouija is great as both a fun, spooky party game and as a cool tool for accessing your subconscious. Like, I don't want to go and say, like, oh, Ouija is like a complete horseshit, because it's totally not. It's a really cool a way to maybe access parts of yourself or things that you think about without kind of
just have fun.
Realizing. Yeah, and it is spooky. When you all sit around with your friends and you ask the ghost his name and he tells, like, that's spooky.
Yeah,
and
it's
really fun.
Spookier than Zozo, the Ouija board demon?
What?
5 different people's ideomotor effects working in tandem. That's spooky.
That's spooky. So just if and when you play Ouija, which I don't be afraid of it. Take it with a grain of salt and like have some fun. Give it a try.
Yeah. Hell yeah.
Devin, what do you think?
I'm into Ouija boards. Very good. I have long wanted a poster of Norman Rockwell's piece of the First Date Ouija. I think it's so cute. There's a great 99% Invisible episode about like the design of Ouija boards, because they've changed throughout the years. So if you're interested in that, you should check that out, since this is a short episode anyway.
Yeah, definitely. You have the time.
Yeah, you got the time.
We're letting you out of class early.
We don't have the time. We're out of touch. We're out of time for this episode of The Great American Scream. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, you can rate, review, and share from whatever service you happen to use to get your podcasts. We are on Spotify and iTunes and Google Play, so check us out on those. If you really enjoyed the episode and you want to share it with more people, share it with a friend who likes spooky things, or your friend from middle school that you did Ouija with that one time on the bus, even though it was paper and a shot glass. It's the best way to spread the word about the show. Adam, can you pimp our social medias?
Yes, you can check us out on Facebook at The Great American Scream or on Twitter at Great Scream Pod. Let us know your thoughts on Ouija, your experiences, and if there's anything you want to hear about on the show, please post at us or tweet at us. You can use the hashtag TGAS.
Yes. Special thank you goes out to Stevie Viola, who did the intro music and outro music for the podcast. Also, thank you to Michael Segudo, who does our lovely disclaimer at the beginning of the show.
Yeah.
I think that's it, Adam. I have been Devin.
I have been Adam.
And hopefully you have been spooked by the Ideomotor effect.
And maybe Zozo.
But
Tell
if you talk to Zozo, do you know what you need to do, Adam?
You have to do it safely.
Yes.